Well, good morning, everyone. My name is Mighty Stream. Today is August the 15th, and I am going to do your spiritual principle a day in a meditation. I am brought to you by Hope Through Navigation, and this is our Hood Recovery Services. If you need to reach me, please do so at recoveryofhope21@gmail.com. It seems like it has been more than an hour since I recorded my last podcast. I was having some technical difficulty, but I think that I have figured everything out. I had to redo the posting of one. So that took a little bit of time, but nonetheless, I'm here now. So let's go ahead and do this spiritual principle a day. It is August the 15th, and it's entitled Guided by Conscience. We come to know our intentions. We get better at hearing our own voice, our own conscience, and listening to our instincts. Living Clean, Chapter 5, Conscious Contact. Even those of us who were raised by wolves were taught the difference between right and wrong. The code of ethics we inherited may have been a bit twisted, but it gave us a point of reference nonetheless. As a result, many of us suffered from a guilty conscience when we screwed up or caused harm early in our using careers. At some point, though, we made a choice, knowingly or not, to behave in ways that were contrary to the values we had internalized. It's not that we lacked a moral compass, we just put it away for a bit. On those occasions when we still felt bad, we turned the denial, defensiveness, and drugs, lots of drugs. It says we turn to denial, defensiveness, and drugs, lots of drugs, to help us stuff the discomfort of a guilty conscience. Our awareness of that still, quiet voice within starts to return almost as soon as we put down the drugs. Our first reunion with our conscience can feel pretty distressing. Without drugs to mask our feelings, many of us experience an uncut dose of the shame we'd been stuffing for years. We're relieved to read that we are not responsible for our disease in the basic text. People who know their way around the 12 steps assure us that the second half of that sentence, we are responsible for our recovery, will help us make peace with the past and develop our own conscience. We begin to tune in to what's right for us and focus on aligning our actions with spiritual principles and our own values. We learn, sometimes through trial and error, to behave in ways we can be proud of. Not wanting to pay a spiritual price, we're slower to act out on our most basic urges and selfish desires. So we do so less frequently. We can even observe our impulses without acting on them. Who knew? With practice, we recalibrate our value system and develop a code of behavior that reflects our intentions. I will listen for the reawakened voice of my conscience, knowing that it reflects my beliefs and intentions. That's a heavy duty. That's a heavy duty meditation, spiritual principle in regards to our guided conscience, and allowing it to be sensed by us, no longer having to segregate ourselves from, our emotions and our feelings and our awarenesses, our core values. This particular meditation is talking about how we all were raised with some sense of right and wrong. Even though we may not have been totally for, that standard that we were raised with, we were aware that there were certain expectations of just being a member of society. For instance, it is expected that you're not going to go around shooting people and killing people. That is an expectation of society, that we all have the right to live and to breathe. This is a fundamental principle that we're raised with. We all know that murder is wrong. Okay. So that's a simple thing that we're raised knowing that people get in trouble when they take the lives of other people. We also are raised with an awareness that we have a right not to be abused by people. We find out early that if someone is being bullying us or someone is being extremely physical with us or harsh with us, we have an understanding of what CPS is, right? We have an understanding of what is feeling good and what isn't. We understand that. We come up with these basic principles of right and wrong. However, even if we agree with them or not, at some point in time, we start to develop our own understanding and our own personality, and we start bartering with these core values. And we say, okay, now I know that generally speaking is supposed to be considered like questionable or not okay, but I'm okay with it. I'm going to do it. And in order to make sure that I don't have a lot of guilt or shame behind doing the opposite of what is expected, that guideline, that baseline of right and wrong, I'm going to put a little drug on top of that so that I feel a little bit more relaxed in my, if you want to call it rebellion, but not rebellion in the true sense of it, right? You're just developing. But what you don't know when you're doing that and you're negotiating your values that you've been given, what you don't know is that if you ever stop using the substance, at some point in time, that conscience, that core value within you starts to reawaken and it starts to make its presence known. That's why it says here that we all have had that rude awakening of having to deal with our conscience without having any drugs in our system. And we're like, okay, so now what is that? Why is that bothering me like that? And it's intense. It's not just bothering me a little bit. It bothers me a lot to hear or to see this situation. Why is that like disturbing me so much? Because your conscience is starting to say, hey, guys, let's get back to our normal selves. She's no longer using drugs anymore. Let's go ahead and get back to where we were, right? It tries to re-exert its strength because it's one of your core values, right? The only way that it was quieted was that you had to put something on it, right? And so now we can become overzealous, right? Definitely. We can become overzealous with our core values now that our conscience is reawakening and impose it on other people. And a lot of times we do because we're not really sure, like, where did all of this come from? And all of a sudden, I am just annoyed. When I see this particular thing happening, I'm annoyed. Like, I know they are not trying to pull that. That is not okay. Right. And we start to try to defend. We've just become like a vigilante in a sense, right? Because now all of a sudden you have a conscience. You've heard people say that, right? Oh, so now you have a conscience. All of a sudden, you get 30 days clean and you have a conscience about how so and so is talking to another person, but you've been using cuss words and putting people down and character assassinating people for years. Yeah, you might have did it for years, but you probably did it as a part of your using behavior. So just because they say, oh, now you have a conscience doesn't necessarily mean, but they're basically saying, oh, you're a hypocrite. You used to do the exact same thing and now it bothers you. It doesn't mean that you have to change your conscience about that. But you do need to be aware that you can become overzealous as it begins to wake up. You can become more of a vigilante, right? Your conscience is for you. Your conscience is to guide you, right? And those that you have control over, like your children, right? And if you're in a position to speak up for the voiceless, then speak up, right? but you don't get to allow your new awareness of your conscious to dictate everybody else's life. Right? So there's a balance there, but I like the fact that this is so real. This meditation is so powerful because it clearly allows us to see the difference in how we were, what we became, and who we are today. And I have like tons of gratitude for just the awareness. You know, I still have these things, I call them flashbacks. I still have moments where I'm stuck in time. Like I could be sitting with family and my mind is 30 years in the past. And if I'm not careful and I get stuck in that place, because they're a bit intrusive, right? Those flashbacks can be a bit intrusive. They kind of come when they want to. If I'm not careful, I can miss all the present beauty that's around me, stuck in yesteryear. And I'll play the whole tape about maybe if I had done such and such, this would not have happened. Maybe if I had just taken the cue, because I remember so-and-so was trying to nudge me and say, girl, it's time to go. If I had just not been so wasted and could have responded appropriately and not been so volatile about her trying to tell me that we need to go, maybe I wouldn't have ended up raped, right? And so you have these flashbacks where you go back into yesteryear and you think about what, you know, your conscience not guiding you well enough or not being as present as it is today. And it truly has more to do with the fact that you were in a state of where your mind and your mood were altered. You were actually giving your power over, your core values over to a drug or substance, right? And so today, we don't want to beat ourselves up over the past. That's why I said we have to give ourselves grace, right? And we want to move in to who we are today. What is your conscience guiding you to do today? And if you're not used to your conscience having a voice, who are you bouncing those thoughts that your conscience brings to you? Who are you bouncing that off of? Who do you trust that you can go to and say, you know what? It used to not bother me, but this one I'm really thinking that I need to do thus and so. I'm really thinking I need to get another job. I'm not okay with what we do, my organization. I'm not okay with what we do or how we do it. We really take advantage of older people and we don't really work for them. We just take their money and give a semblance of us showing up at their house to clean, but we really don't help them. I'm not okay with that. I need a different job that I can feel good about. Who do you have when your conscience starts to wake up? Who do you have in your life that you trust enough to just say, this is what I'm thinking. Tell me what you think about it. Because getting to know your conscience and allowing it to guide you is like learning how to do the two-step with a new partner. Yeah, maybe the partner has always been in your life, but you've ignored it for so long. You basically don't really know it as your own, right? And then when you learn that when you go to dance, you have to lean into your partner and to feel their movement and you flow with them. You begin to dance with grace. You begin to trust your partner when they tap you on the back here that they want to spin you out in that direction. You begin to learn the chemistry, the sweet science of dancing, right? To the point where you can learn a new dance almost immediately just by knowing the partner that you're dancing with. So when your conscience becomes that much a part of you and you're aware of how it operates, then there's less resistance. you begin to trust it instead of doubting it. And that's a sweet place to be. Believe me, it is a sweet place to be. And so, in the meantime, as you're cleaning up and starting to learn your conscience, I would recommend that you find someone that you can bounce things off of. It really, really will bless you. Allowing your voice to reawaken and to learn that it can be trusted is a place where you want to be. And if it takes all day, right? If it takes a little bit of time, again, like our other meditation and just for today, we need to give time. It really will be a benefit to your recovery and to the recovery of other people, because when they start coming to you because they don't trust their conscience, you will find that your voice is being helpful in the sense of service to others and helping them understand where they are. That's a beautiful meditation. I've enjoyed talking to you, and I hope that you will have a beautiful day. I'll be talking to you tomorrow.